There are so many Quest 2 games, but we are gonna be counting down the very best that are worth your time. So make sure you destroy that like button on your way in, and let's dive right into it. Starting it off with number 15, Zenith, The Lost City. Many VR users have heard of this game before, because it is one of the first full VR MMO games that can be played on the Quest 2.
Hey, that's pretty good.
And this incredible, ambitious idea wasn't easy to pull off. And although Zenith doesn't have all the answers yet, it is already heads and shoulders above most of its competition. And thanks to its great start, the makers, known as Ramen VR, have the funds to continuously maintain the game, adding in new events and storylines as time progresses. One example of this was the massive Celestial Throne update, and with much more content coming in the future. And sure, although it is a very rough game, with lots of bugs and issues to iron out, Zenith is definitely just the start of a journey of many other VR MMOs to come. Number 14 is Moss Book 1 and 2. These are technically separate games, but Book 2 picks up the story moments after the end of the first edition. And it is one of the rare third-person VR games that doesn't just work, but really make you feel like you're playing some of the best content on the platform right now. Because in it, you guide an adorable little mouse named Quill to cute diorama-sized levels. And while you're doing this, you have to solve different puzzles, as well as engaging in some sword-based battles. But the main point of this game is the bond that you build with this little mouse, because you are playing as a larger companion to this tiny protagonist, where you have to work together to overcome these obstacles. And this makes it feel much more like a team effort than just you playing a game. And the second installment, known as Moss Book 2, is technically a stronger and longer sequel as well, but it does feel more like a continuation of the same journey opposed to a complete fresh adventure. And luckily, this game is now finally playable on Quest 2. And number 13 is Green Hell VR. Even for non-virtual reality players, you might have already heard about this game before, because it was originally released as a flat-screen survival game, both for PC as well as consoles. But last year, they brought the experience over to virtual reality headsets, with one release for the Quest 2 alone, and another one for PC VR. Now there is a big difference between these two versions, where on PC, you almost get the exact same experience as on flat-screen gaming. But whereas on Quest 2 alone, it will follow the same story beats, but in a more focused and streamlined version. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing though. While a little depth is lost in the overall length, it is still a deep and taxing survival game that fans of the genre will enjoy. So if survival games are your favorite, then you can definitely dig your teeth into this one. And number 12 is 11 Table Tennis. This game keeps coming up as one of the best games playable on the Quest 2. It is probably the most accurate, authentic representation of a sport in virtual reality. Whether you're just serving up some hot shots or getting some desperate returns, 11's physics behave exactly the way you would expect in real life. And tapping the ball with your controller will start to feel as natural as if it was a real pedal. Adding in the many new updates and environments that you can play as make it both a fun as well as versatile game for almost anybody to enjoy. Number 11, Echo VR. This is a multiplayer, zero-gravity game that takes part as a futuristic esports, where both teams are trying to throw discs and score points at the same time. And the best part of all, this game is completely free. Now, Echo VR has stood the test of time as a multiplayer game, because over the years, it still has a growing community. But although it is an easy game to pick up, it is very hard to master. Especially for new players to VR, the combat and movements inside this game can get very intense. So if you don't have an iron stomach or weak VR legs, you might want to hold off on this one a bit longer. And number 10 is Beatsaber. It is almost impossible to make a VR game list without mentioning this one. Even if you don't own a Quest 2 at all, you have most probably seen some people play it or either viral videos elsewhere. But to its core, it is a very simple yet addictive rhythm game where on some amazing beats, you have to slash these blocks into the right direction. And while it might look easy at first, the levels can go from beginner to complete God mode. It is even so popular that most VR headsets come directly bundled in with this game. But the only downside is the highly expensive paid DLC. This means that your base game is not directly the full version. And if you want to add in new songs or music packs, you would have to pay these separately. And sadly, they don't come in cheap. But even so, it is one of the best Quest 2 games to own. Number 9, Onward. This is for the hardcore first-person shooters out there, and it could be even said to be a worthy contender in the best online shooter in general. But on the Quest, in a wire-free gameplay, it comes to life even more, opening up new tactics like easily looking around a corner, as well as being highly realistic. But its downside is that this game is not easy at all, with most competitive play being on a complete different level. Besides that, the game also significantly suffered going onto the Quest 2. Number 8. Demeo. This is a very unique game compared to the others on this list, because unlike the action-based first-person games, Demeo is actually a tabletop experience. So this is for all those Dungeons and Dragons fans out there. You can even play it with up to 4 others, making it a multiplayer VR experience. Now your goal is to pick a class and tackle a randomly generated dungeon, but the game's punishing difficulty means sessions can last anywhere from minutes to multiple hours. And with loads of more content and new dungeons on the horizon, it is only gonna get better. Number 7. Bone Lab. This is probably one of the most hyped VR games of all time. Being a sequel to the famously PC VR game known as Boneworks, it had high expectations to live up to. And for starters, it is definitely not for those who are new to VR, because Bone Lab is a very intense experience. However, it does serve a specific audience on purpose, because the franchise's first title, Boneworks, was known for its physical simulation and sandbox gameplay. And Bone Lab brings this experience to the standalone VR Quest 2. So if that is what you're looking for, then you will definitely find it here. But do keep in mind that it features a very short campaign, focusing more on the extensive sandbox toolset, even allowing some amazing community mods. And although it seems that many people either love or hate this game, I still think it deserves a spot high on this list. Number 6. Red Matter 2. This is an amazing sci-fi adventure with probably one of the most impressive virtual showcases available on Quest 2. And after they produced a similarly stunning experience with the original Red Matter, the developers, known as Vertical Robot, doubled down on creating a compelling and gorgeous sci-fi game. And although the gameplay is pretty slow, it focuses on environmental puzzles and the occasional combat. But any hiccups in the gameplay are supplemented by the beautiful scenery inside the game itself, which is really pushing what the Quest 2 is capable of. Number 5. Population 1. One of the all-time favorites, and often compared to the Fortnite of VR, this is a superb battle royale shooter. Now, Population 1 takes place on a huge map in which teams of 3 battle it out to the last one standing. Choose where you drop and scavenge for supplies, and make sure to stay in the safe zones as you fight to survive. And not only is it a rock-solid shooter, it has some great mechanics as well, like holding out your arms to glide while you leap off the side of a building, or using your own hands to skill up these insane walls. And it also includes cross-play support, so that you can play with your friends using other headsets. Number 4. VR Chat. If you've been anywhere near the internet in the last few years, it is most likely that you already heard about VR Chat, because it is a user-generated social VR space filled with anything you can imagine, because the players are able to create their own avatars and worlds as they please, making it even better that they can also visit those of others. And some people put so much effort into it, like the insane Project Aincrad that is trying to make the game Sword Art Online, but the main focus is on the social experience. And making it even better is that this game is completely free. And personally, I think this is a game that any Quest 2 user must at least try once. Number 3. Blade and Sorcery Nomad. This is a medieval fantasy game, focusing on physical combat and magic. But the reason why this game is so good is because of its unique and realistic physics system, built completely from the ground up, exclusively for VR. This means that collisions are dictated, but also that objects have an actual weight to it, and the blades can be used to penetrate soft materials or even deflect magic. Now, in Blade and Sorcery Nomad, the combat is completely dependent on how creative you are. You can choose your weapon, stance, and even your own fighting style, creating a truly unique experience that feels almost too real. Which gets us to number 2, Resident Evil 4 VR. This game shouldn't even need an introduction, with many of us having big doubts when this was first announced for virtual reality. But it did not only survive its transition, it ended up being one of the best Quest 2 games ever made. It takes you into the full port of the well-known zombie game, but now from a first-person view and full motion controls supported. And sure, there are some elements of this version of the game that don't hold up that well, like for example, the virtual cutscenes. But when you're facing a horde of enemies, with your back literally against the wall, it is hard to care about these minor details. And it is probably one of the most wonderful ways to revisit this classic game. But that gets us to number 1, which is The Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners. This game is one of those amazing gems, pushing to what virtual reality is truly capable of, because Saints and Sinners truly delivers on all fronts, not only setting the bar high for zombie games, but basically for the entire medium, because it has some amazing physics-based combat that has you wrestle with hordes of undead, throwing every ounce of effort you can muster into each swing and stab. And just like with Blade and Sorcery, this combat feels highly realistic. But it isn't just a silly sandbox or wave-based survival game, because Saints and Sinners packs its action into a full VR campaign. And this is very rare, because most games are now also called experiences, meaning they only last a couple hours at maximum. But The Walking Dead: Saints and Sinners takes this to a whole nother level, and adding in some human enemies, side missions, and the ability to even kill a zombie with a spoon, what you get is one of the deepest native VR games on the market. And of course, it now also has a sequel known as Retribution. But let me know in the comments what your favorite Quest 2 game is.